Okay, in this example, we'll just imagine for a moment that instead of the output of the lookup table being a scaled score or a standardized score, what if we want a grade to come out of it? So I've taken much the same scenario here where we've got some raw scores to be entered into the formula, but I've changed it slightly in as much as what we want is for a certain grade to be given as the answer from the lookup table. So I said a raw score of 3 or less gives me a U for unclassified grade. A raw score between 4 and 7 should give me E, and so on and so forth down the line there. I've used GCSE old-fashioned grades because mentally I find it easier and a bit confusing when the 1 to 9 grades are mentioned and we talk about a raw score of 1 to 9 and an output grade of 7, whatever. Anyway, using the old-fashioned grades there. Go into Sims, and we're going to again create a lookup table. So I'm going to go down to Assessment and Lookup Tables. I'm going to create a new lookup table, and I'm going to call this one Raw Score to GCSE. And we'll set it up in much the same way as we did before. Now, don't be tempted, like I sometimes am, to think, well, we're looking at GCSE grades for this, so this needs to be a grade type. The type that we've got here refers to the inputs into the formula. And the inputs into this formula are still raw scores, 1 to 24. So this remains a marks integer option there. You'll notice if I had chosen grade, that this section would change slightly and it would start talking about grades. And that should be a clue really as to why we don't want to change it at the moment, because the input is still going to be a raw score. So let's keep that on marks integer. But in every other respect, it's the same as the previous example that we did. So I'm going to put in a wide range of possible ages to use with this particular lookup table. So I'll go from 7 years old to exactly 12 years old. I'll keep the stepping months at 12 and order it ascending. And we still have, like I said before, we still have scores from 1 to 24 in ascending order. And again, if I apply that, we get this blank skeleton, if you like, for filling out the grades, which I can then copy to the clipboard. And then if I go into Excel, if I create a new tab down at the bottom here, paste that in there, I can then hopefully use these tabs. It's there. And I can copy the grades in there. So Control C there. Into my tab. Oops, wrong one. There it is. And just paste those in nice and quickly to save some time. Sometimes, depending on the format of your tables, this can be a bit fiddly. Like I say, sometimes you have to check that Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you're using doesn't try and change that into a date or a division sum. So sometimes you'll have to make sure that is formatted as text rather than whatever it defaults to. I think that's kept it though as text. You can usually tell. It usually puts some extra characters in there if it's formatted it as something else. But there we go, that's broadly speaking what I need. I just now need to highlight the whole table, Control C again, go back into Sims and paste that into the grid there. Yes, there. So now we have our basic lookup table. We can click on Save and we can use it in our mark sheets. Let's give that a go. So if I go back to Focus, Assessment, I would first. I've already got a column that holds raw scores. So for this one, this example, I'm going to reuse that. But I don't have on my system. I don't have an aspect that will receive the answer. I can write the answer back into it. It needs to be a GCSE grades format. So I'm going to create a new aspect. I'm going to create a new aspect. I have already actually created a grade set for this aspect because this needs to be a new a new aspect, new grade aspect. So this is a new aspect. It's a grade aspect. There we go. I'll leave that as the default. And the grade set has got to be the result set that holds those grades. Now, sometimes if you have a lookup table that includes grades that aren't in your grade set, what will happen in that scenario is that there will be no error messages. It will just not give a grade for that particular pupil. Sometimes that's absolutely fine, but sometimes you can be scratching your head wondering why it's not working. Well, just bear that in mind. If things with the lookup table don't seem to be working, go back an extra step, and in this case go back to the step of the grade set and just make sure that all the grades that are possible outputs from your lookup table are actually included in the grade set as well. Anyway, this is my grade set. It's a very simple grade set, so there's very little scope for me to forget a grade there. So that should be okay. So now I have my aspect. I should be able to go to Focus, Assessment, and Template. And create a new template, which I'll call Scaled Lookup Table Demo. It's not really scaled scores at this one. Should click on New again. I shall first of all add a column for data entry, which will be my raw scores. I will set a result set this time. I think it is good practice to always set a result set. I'm not sure if I have an appropriate result set here. Yes, I probably do. Year 6. And the aspects, and we're going to reuse this raw score demo aspect. You'll probably use a different one for your particular applications. Click on Finish. So there's the first column. So then the second column is the one that actually has the lookup table in it. So this will be a column for data entry using a formula. Result sets, I'll use the same year 6 one. And the aspect for the column is the one I've just created. Should be easy to spot because I've got a hashtag in front of it. There it is. And the formula type again is a lookup formula. The column that I want to look up, if you like, is the raw score. So I want to use raw score as my looking up column. And the lookup table here that I want to use should be this one, raw score to GCSE. Don't need to bother with an optional effective date. I will set it to read only though. And click Finish. So now all I need to do is create a mark sheet for year 6, for example. Save it. Open this one up. And now I should be able to put some raw scores in here. So 23. Making up. And because this is not dependent on ages, oops, 34, too high. Because this isn't dependent on ages, I don't need to worry about the result date there. In the first lecture, we talked about the result date a lot, and it was vital. But because we've got the same grades in all the same columns, it's going to make no difference. Press calculate, and it pops the grades in there. Let's see if I can get something a bit more variety in here. But you get the idea that that's a nice, easy way of converting a number to a grade.